Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time for another episode of Health Talks with Dr. Trinh. The one show, the only show that shows you how to live a healthier life and a happier life. One conversation at a time. And today, well, he says an old friend with him. I'm going to let him introduce his old friend here. Dr. Trinh, welcome, sir. Who'd you bring with you?
She is a young friend.
A young friend. I like that even better.
I've known her for a long time. She's awesome. Yes, Eithne Keegan, who is a part of an awesome organization that we're going to talk about today. And Eithne, why don't you tell us about yourself? Tell our audience.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Eithne Keegan, and I'm originally from Ireland.
You're originally from Ireland? Oh, Dr. Trinh, yeah. I'm a good Irish lad here. You couldn't have given me a better present this morning.
This is like the Irish meeting today, guys.
That is. I love it.
Well, there are only two kinds of people in the world, and those who are Irish and those who think they're Irish.
Isn't that or wish they were Irish, or wish they were
Irish. Exactly. Yes. So, I am a registered nurse with a master's in nursing leadership, and I am the national coordinator of Healthcare Christian Fellowship USA, which used to be Hospital Christian Fellowship. It was founded in 1936 in South Africa by Francis Grimm, and we are in 80 countries around the world, and I am the coordinator for HCF USA.
Wow.
All right, and what do you guys do?
Our mission is to encourage and strengthen caregivers in their faith, workplace, and personal life, promoting biblical principles in healthcare. We train caregivers to meet the spiritual needs of their patients and fellow workers, and especially today, being that, we're the frontline healthcare workers are being burdened in such a terrible way with this pandemic. This is essential for the essential workers.
Can I be a bomb thrower this morning and throw a little bomb into the conversation here? I just read this morning in Axios, and I'd read this before, that recent surveys, I know Pew does a national survey on religion. I know there's another one that just came out apparently recently within the week. And it doesn't look good for religion or for any sort of religious views. For the first time ever in America, less than half of Americans say they belong to an organized religion. And 1 in 5 now say, none of the above. I got none of this. This is as the article concludes, organized religion is shrinking in America, and it's going to take a miracle to turn it around. Does that same thing hold true in medical professionals? Are fewer and fewer of them people of faith at all? You're trying to get them to hold on to their faith, and it seems like we're losing our faith across the board here, losing our religion.
Actually, I don't believe that. I think there's a revival. I believe that people, because of the burnout and all of the things that are happening in the workplace, and especially with COVID, that people are going back to their religion.
They certainly need something. Even this article says it leaves a God-sized hole in your life or in the country. If you believe in nothing, how do you make it through these tough times here?
We can't without God in our lives.
I'm a believer.
We are a non-denominational organization. And, in a world with information overload, we're constantly flooded with much more than we can handle. So we need something to go back to. We need something to lean on. And people, just think about, if somebody was dying, the first thing they say, God, please help me.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think it was Bill Cosby said there aren't any atheists in a foxhole, when you're under stress.
Exactly. Yes. So we have to have something to go back to, something to lean on, something for our strength and hope, something to give us hope.
So is
you
it
know,
a
during this
crisis? Clearly, a religion is clearly at a crossroads, at a crisis in this country. At least organized religion is.
Organized.
Maybe people still have beliefs. I'd be curious to know how many of your audience out there are members of an organized religion, any religion, or whether they're part of the growing group of none of the above. I'd love to hear. They don't have to tell me what they are or something, but do you belong to any religion? Or are we all on our own trying to figure this out? We're all, as I'm a good Irish Catholic here, still, but I guess I'm somewhat of a cafeteria Catholic. I pick and choose what I'm going to put on my plate every week here. Are we left floundering on our own, and particularly in the medical world? I just can't imagine a world of people helping others who really just don't have any greater faith or believe in anything other than the immediate moment here. That just seems like that would be difficult. And I'll give you one longer question while we're letting everybody respond here if they have any religion.
Mm-hmm.
Is that part of the reason that I keep seeing these shocking statistics, doctors and nurses killing themselves, overwhelmed, burned out, can't handle it anymore? I quit. I mean, I still can't wrap my head around that one. Talk about that one.
This has been such a major crisis this past year and a half, approximately. Major crisis for frontline healthcare workers. And as you said, they're working so hard, they don't even think of themselves or care for themselves. And what we do is we help them, give them strategies to help them maintain their physical, spiritual, and mental health.
It's got to be hard. What do you think, Dr. Trinh? You're out there in the front lines. Are doctors losing it? Are they not just losing their faith, they're losing their ability to hang on?
I don't consider myself religious. As far as, my history. I grew up Buddhist.
Right.
My mother is a Buddhist nun. My uncle
your mother is a Buddhist. No, you never told me that. Your mother is a Buddhist nun.
Her hair is nicely shaved. She's got the golden garments on. She's a Buddhist nun. My uncle's a Buddhist monk. So that's my background. So I've never considered myself religious. I've never considered myself, holy. If anything, I'm probably the other way, right? I'm probably the sinner of sinners, just trying to redeem myself.
You look like it. You look like a rascal. You look like a
kind of, right? Okay, right. But I can say that that I hope to be spiritual in the sense that I hope to have a relationship with a creator.
Right.
Right. I'm not Catholic, Protestant. I don't have a denomination. I never had a denomination. And quite frankly, I don't want to have a denomination. When I see God, right, when I die and meet God, he's not going to ask me, what denomination did you come from? What church did you come from? He's going to ask me, did you have a relationship with me?
Right.
In some way. And I'm all about relationships. And I also believe that in health, treating an organ isn't enough. Treating a blood test lab result isn't enough, right? And
that's pretty controversial for doctors, because in today's pay for service world, that's kind of what you're paid to do. Here's a problem, right. I fix it. Next, keep the line moving here.
Right. Yeah. We are made physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Mm-hmm. And if you want true health, you have to address all three components of who we are. And so it's very important to address, not just a body, not just an organ, not just a blood test, but it's also important to address the other issues.
Can I give you an interesting example of this here?
Yeah.
And I don't know that this would be an interesting conversation to have your friend back on from, what was the name of the group here, the medical group that you guys all belong to, whose name suddenly escapes me?
360 Clinic.
Oh, no, who was the medical care group that you had on, the president?
SOS, Share Ourselves. We
No,
had
no,
a few groups
no,
on.
the where you started practicing at Bristol Park Medical,
Oh
whatever this
yeah,
is.
Bristol Park Medical Group. Oh, yeah, Mark Schaefer,
Mark Schaefer, who
the
now runs.
CEO, our CEO. Yeah.
And this was the experience I had. My late mother, who was a good Irish Catholic too, died many years ago. And for some reason, late in life, she caught this bug to help the dead and dying, or the dying, whatever you call it, hospice work. She started working in the hospice work. And I don't know, it's because she saw the handwriting on the wall coming in her life, or whether she just found a fascination with this. But she went down. And so she volunteered at, this is back in Michigan, at a local hospital, to just come in and kind of be a grief counselor and help people in these troubled times. And they're more than happy because, hey, we got a room full of people shot and heart attacks and everything else. Yeah, anything you can do to help calm these people down, go for it. And it was a Catholic hospital. Mm-hmm. And the nuns who had founded it, who were little old ladies by now, were upstairs and were not allowed to wander the halls and give help to those hurting and wondering. And she thought, how horrible. You got the resources right here in the hospital, but it had become, the nurses the Catholic order who had founded it, it had been absorbed into a bigger group. The nuns were still allowed to live there, but they were kind of isolated and kept alone. Now it's a modern hospital, and we're going to make this run like a machine. And she said more than once she watched doctors trying to explain to a mother why their son is dying, trying to explain to somebody, break the news that they're not going to make it or something here in an emergency setting. And they all struggled. They were like, go down the hall and there's a little chapel. I don't know what to tell you, stumbling, hemming and hawing, because everybody wants to know why and what this means and how am I going to deal with it, all these questions. And the doctor goes, I don't know. I'm just telling you that they're not going to make it. I'm really sorry. Next. And I wonder if the medical profession, I'm not saying they all have to be, a part of a religious organization, but that's why so many religious organizations, not just Catholics and others, founded these hospitals to console people at this moment, to help them, not just to cure them. We don't do enough of helping the patients. We do enough of helping them through the immediate crisis, and then we help move them out and onto somebody else's plate. I can't answer these questions, how you're going to handle this diagnosis, how you're going to deal with something here. I can only tell you, here's the way it is. Talk about that. It seems like medicine, why is medicine so divorced from helping?
Well, I don't believe that it's divorced from helping. The Joint Commission of Accreditation of Hospitals requires a spiritual assessment of every patient.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
When they are being admitted. It's a requirement.
And what does that mean? Because I can't think of any time I had taken my daughter in for emergency, broke a leg or something or whatever, broke something. I don't think anybody ever asked any spiritual questions about it. It was just an emergency. You got a broken leg, something here. You got a.
Well, not everybody knows how to do it correctly.
Yeah.
So, and if they're doing it, they're not even aware that you're asking these spiritual questions. Like, who are you relying on for your support? What gives you hope in your life? How do you deal with crises? How do you deal with the things that are happening? How do you deal with illness? Do you have a support system around you? Do you have anybody that will help you? And where do you look when you are without all hope? Where do you go?
I spent many years, as anybody who's listened to the show for 5 minutes knows, taking care of my late mother, taking care of my late father, and my late aunt who never got married. I'm an only child, so I was the caregiver and went through all those emergencies. They all passed away, all over for different reasons. My mother had Parkinson's, my dad had a bad fall, my aunt had cancer. All of these weren't quick deals over a long period of time, many hospital visits, many trips to emergency, many doctors along the way. Not one of them ever asked that question. This was out in the desert in Eisenhower Hospital, a great facility, but not one of them. I could think of at least 18, I remember I counted once, at least 18 different trips to the hospital with them, all at different stages, strokes, everything, you can name it. Not once did anybody ever ask those questions on the intake form or at any point in the conversation.
Well, the sad part of it is it's not taught in the schools, in nursing schools or medical schools. It's not taught there. So how are we going to get that information if we don't have somebody to help us out? And HCF USA, HCFI is the international branch, and HCF USA gives those tools necessary for a medical profession or anybody to help them, understand these questions, why they're asking them, what's the reason for asking them, and, where did they go for help? So that's what we are here to do, to give those strategies to help in all areas, because it's whole person care we're looking at.
Absolutely.
We're looking at every part of the body, not just the spirit as well.
Yeah, okay. Do you see this, Dr. Trinh? You practice at different hospitals. Is that the question? Are those common questions that physicians and nurses ask?
Not common questions, because not everyone is comfortable talking about the spiritual aspects of health or address that. A lot of folks feel like, that should be like my personal thing, and I shouldn't talk about that. But for someone who is spiritual, and for a patient who happens to be spiritual and then use their spirituality as part of their healing process,
yes, right.
Why not promote and advocate for them to use those spirituality? It's not about necessarily you having to convert them to your religion or they converting you. It's really promoting the importance of their own spirituality and using that as part of the health and healing process, right? And
so how would you do that? Give us some examples. You work shifts in emergency. Somebody comes in with a shotgun wound. Somebody comes in with a car crash. Somebody comes in with a heart attack or stroke. These are severe things, crisis at hand. The family's freaking out. The patient's freaking out. In addition to calming them down. Yeah.
There are a good number of times that with a patient's consent and knowing that they are spiritual, there are a good number of times that I prayed with patients.
You're kidding, really?
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine one doctor I've ever seen in all those years of all those times, not one of them ever volunteered to pray or even offered or suggested it.
I do it all the time. And again, it's it's with consent, and that there's somebody who believes in God, and there's somebody who relies on God for part of their healing process or part of their health or part of their opportunity to cope, right, with whatever they're going through. And you're not necessarily praying that God, take away this cancer or God, but you're praying to allow them to plug into this resource, which is a spiritual resource. Right. And what's interesting, Paul, is that sometimes that one prayer with a patient is probably the most important thing that they have gotten out of the office visit.
Yeah.
And they tell me that.
Wow.
They tell me that.
Wow.
Yeah, they tell me that.
So how do you build that in? But you're being billed by Medicare by the minute here. There's times running,
It's very cost efficient, Paul. You're keeping down healthcare costs, right? Your prayer doesn't cost anything. There's no CPT code for it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, but it's probably one of the more healing aspects of care.
Dan Daly, who I'm proud to say is one of the tribe here. He's a good Irish Catholic and proud of it. He says here too. And he says what I always think: faith can get you through tough times. Sometimes it's the only thing. If you have no hope, how do you hold on?
Yes.
And in a hopeless situation, particularly.
And the other thing too is it's not just with the patients that we pray. It's with our colleagues and with our peers. I can remember I used to work at Mission Hospital, trauma hospital.
There you go.
And there was one nurse. She was a new grad. She was newly out of school, and she was having a really rough time. And the charge nurse asked me to come down. I was the nursing supervisor. She asked me to come down and talk with her because she had a really bad experience with her patient. patient was very angry with her and very nasty to her. And being a new nurse, you're really scared anyway. You're scared for your job.
Right.
And then when the charge nurse talked to her after the patient came and complained about this young nurse, the young nurse was devastated. And she thought that she was going to lose her job. So my charge nurse, Christy, talked with her, and she said, I think I need to get Eithne involved here. And the poor nurse was just crying her eyes out. So I took her into another room, and Christy and I just sat with her, and we talked with her and explained the process, you know, what happens, that not everybody's happy with their care, and not everybody, you know, cares what you do for them either. And this is something that we will need to learn as we go. And I asked her, I said, may I pray with you?
Wow.
And I prayed with her, and I tell you, her spirits uplifted. And she said, nobody has ever prayed with me before.
Would you ever be reprimanded for doing that? Would somebody come back to you later on? So you asked her consent. So that's
the asking the consent is the most important thing. My job as a supervisor was to help this nurse,
right,
is to walk her through, and she was ready to quit nursing. And my job was to see what I could do. So I talked with her and explained what happened, explained what the patient's family said, and went through all the processes that we normally do, and then asked her if we could pray. And
so many
thing helped her.
So many nurses, I'm going to be maybe a little controversial again here and show my own bias. There are certainly good people in the system, but so many see so many problems. They become so jaded. So you're just a number. Next, yeah, I know suffering. What do you want me to say? And I think it's almost a defense mechanism that they don't get too close. They don't see you as a person. They just see you as a patient. And if you're a patient, you're just a statistic on a chart. You're a number. I've seen this before. I know what's going to happen. I don't let myself connect with you as a person, because if I do, then I'll be crushed. I'll be devastated. I'll be hurt. I'll open myself up to the pain that you're feeling here. I think they maintain this kind of distance to maintain their sanity sometimes here. And yet it comes off as very cold, and it comes off as uncaring. Talk about that. Is that my own experience? Am I seeing something that others don't see?
No, I think you're correct in that way. I think that there are some medical personnel that feel that way. It's because they've given up hope. It's because they don't have a relationship with something beyond themselves. Yeah, right. Beyond themselves. And yes, they can give up. Yes, they can be mean-spirited. And yes, they can be cold and burnt out. And that's what we call burnt out. They lose their compassion with life in general. And how do they get that back? How do we help them to get that back?
You tell us. You're the expert. I just see too many of them, and I guess some of them either quit or they kill themselves, or they just become kind of nasty, crabby, cold robots here who go through the motions but aren't really. They're healing maybe, but they're not helping you.
A story, one of my dear friends, Nurse Georgie, she wrote a book. It's called Nurse Georgie. She was an ICU nurse, and her charge nurse was really mean and burned out, just like you described.
Yeah.
That type of person. And
Nurse Ratchet from the old One Flew Over the Cuckoo's
Nurse
Nest.
Georgie would go into work every day, and she would pray before she went into work, before she went in the doors of the ICU. And she said, Lord, please help Ruthie today. Help her, because I know we're going to have a terrible day if something happens. And Ruthie just kept on going, and she would always put Georgie down, and would always try and belittle her, and whatever she did was Nurse Georgie couldn't do anything right.
Yeah, right.
So one day, Nurse Georgie went home, and she said, Lord, I don't know what to do for Ruthie. Okay, I do not know what to do for her, but I know it's her birthday next week, and I know you would ask me to get her a birthday cake, but I don't want to do that. I just don't want to do that. She's so mean to me. She's such a nurse ratchet. I do not know what to do. And she felt God saying, get her a cake.
Get her a cake.
And put on it, you are loved.
Ruthie.
Oh, wow.
To this nasty,
yes.
Do we really practice that? Can we turn the other cheek and love those that hate us here? Yeah.
So she walked in the morning of Ruthie's birthday, and she put it into the break room. And she watched as Ruthie walked in to put her things away. And when Ruthie saw the cake that she was loved, she cried.
I'll bet.
And she said, Georgie, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I never knew that I was loved.
What a beautiful story. But then she's Irish, so it comes natural to her here. We're all natural storytellers here. So let's look at some of the comments. What are we getting here, Dr. Trinh? Here? Dan Daly had one, and so did your other friend here.
Faith can get through tough times. By the way, Dan Daly is a Irish Catholic and proud of it.
Yes, we mentioned that. We should give him she's part of the tribe. He's part of the tribe. He is. I can slip into the brogue even though I'm not from there.
Vilma says that's a gesture of love. Sagun says hello. He's watching you right now.
How about somebody? How about this palliative care idea? Dan Daly brings that up. I was kind of what my mother was trying to get involved in one way, shape, or another. A palliative is an old-fashioned word, and I've forgotten even what it means, but it's this kind of holistic helping, holding your hand, guiding you along, not just moving you down the assembly line.
Yes.
Taking care of your needs. And there are those who come in more and more of these, particularly for the patient. I'll tell you the ones that I really found when this really came to pass. In each case, my mother, my dad, and my aunt reached a point when it was clear they weren't going to survive.
Yep.
Boy, the doctors got scarce. Why am I here? I'm here because I can do something. When I can't do anything, they felt very uncomfortable being in the room. What do you want me to do? We're coming to the end here.
They ran out of tools in their toolkit.
Yeah, and they really became scarce. They didn't want to, and when they did, you could tell they were uncomfortable being around, like they'd failed or something, or they didn't know what to do. Talk about that.
And that's where you realize that, healing is just more than physical healing.
Yeah.
Healing is emotional healing. Healing is having closure with your relationships, having peace, right? Especially if you're on your way out from cancer or from a heart attack or whatever it is, right? It's not just physical healing, but to have emotional closure with those relationships that you need closure with. And then it's spiritual. Right. It's having, why do we only call the chaplain at the end?
Yeah. Only at the end.
Why?
And there is the last resort.
If the chaplain is so important, why are they only called at the last hour?
Yes.
Think about that.
I'll give you another one. Why is the doctor never present when you die? Not one case was any doctor present when any of my loved ones died. By that time, and again, so none of them was a surprise. I suppose if it was a surprise and they're out there trying to work on the heart or something, yes. But once they know the cancer is kicked in, the time is short, they stop coming. They kind of pass you over to somebody else. They try to a chaplain or a hospice worker or something else or whatever here. And those people do fill a role. And I have nothing but love and good things to say about all the people that stepped in the moment. But the doctor stepped away, and not once was the doctor there when any of my loved ones died.
I'm so sorry to hear that. I'll just give you another story as we Irish give stories.
That's right. That's right.
there's a doctor at Mission Hospital, and we were in a code situation with this guy that he was in the he was a trauma patient, and he was dying, and we were trying to save him. And his wife was older than him, and she had just gone home, and the doctor was there, and the nurse said, "Shall we call the wife?" And the doctor said, "No, I will call her myself."
Wow.
And I overheard the conversation. I was standing there and I was praying for the patient and the family at the time, silently. And the doctor said to the wife, he said, "Don't worry, don't rush to get here." He said, "Do you believe in God? Or do you have a relationship with God?"
Yeah.
And she said yes. And he said, "Okay," he said, "if you do," he said, "you know where he's going to go. So don't be afraid. Take your time,
Wow.
come in. If God wants him to be here when you come in, he'll be here. If not, I want you to be at peace."
You're going to get me all teary-eyed here, but that's powerful stuff.
That was, to me, I didn't even know that this doctor had any type of faith basis, but he was always a compassionate, kind, caring man. And I always noticed that about him.
And I will say, I'm not going to slam everybody that treated him. There were compassionate, caring people along the way, but when it came to that moment, they didn't know what to do. They fled. They felt uncomfortable. They coughed. They looked at the floor. They kicked their shoe. They tried to be short and curt and tell you the answer, but there was no attempt to try and, what your doctor just did, walk them through it or help them through it. It was
because they don't know how to do it. They haven't been taught the right way how to do it.
There you go.
Why don't we teach this in schools? Why don't we help people get through these difficult times? Why do we burn out? Because we don't know what to do. We're afraid. We ourselves, don't know the next step to do. So we hide, right?
Yes.
When you don't know what to do, you hide.
That's right.
You walk away. You leave. So you leave others to do the work for you. But if you're brave enough and you stay there.
Yeah. We have Vilma came on. She says, "I'm a nurse. I consider nursing a vocation." I'd love to hear some people in the practice. Am I being too hard on everybody here? I'm just telling you what I observed in multiple visits with multiple family members over multiple years.
Reality. What you observe is reality.
Yeah.
We are not trained to, we're trained to recognize a tumor, to understand a lab report, we're trained to diagnose a disease.
Yeah.
We're not trained to treat a person holistically.
No.
And that's a problem. And that is a problem because we are more than just an organ or a lab.
Yes.
Right. And, I had an interesting experience during medical school.
Okay.
I was part of a Bible study, and on Friday nights, and as we were closing at the end of the study, it's I think around 10 p.m. or so, it was time for like prayer requests. And so my prayer request in this group of folks doing a Bible study was for healing of a patient that I'm taking care of in the hospital. Taking care of, I mean, I'm just a medical student, right? But it's somebody I followed,
right,
rotating through the hospital. And I just, had this connection with this patient, and I asked for her healing, and it was at 10 p.m. And so we prayed for her at 10 p.m. It was a Friday night. On Saturday, I went to the hospital, did my rounds. When it came to check up on the patient, I found out the patient died. I was shocked. I was like, whoa, I just saw this patient the day before.
Yeah.
And what happened? So I came up and I asked the nurses, what happened? Where's, how did my patient die? When did they die? That patient died at 10 p.m. the night before.
Wow.
And
when you're at the Bible study?
when we were praying for her healing.
She died.
And I'm like, okay, maybe healing has a different definition to God.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe healing has a different definition to God. Maybe healing means, you're done with your suffering,
Right.
come back to me. And it was the exact same time that we had prayed for healing. And I was like, maybe I should pray for healing for somebody else,
But you could have easily interpreted that the other way and say, I'm not going to do this anymore. That didn't do any good. Gee, God, I reached out to you, and this is what you do. You kill him? Thanks.
Yeah. So we have these limited world views, but maybe our Creator has a more eternal view of how things look.
I'm curious, your mother is really a Buddhist nun?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Heck yeah.
So I know so little about Buddhist traditions or how they handle death or anything. How would she approach this? Or what would, if I was in Vietnam in a predominantly Buddhist hospital or country dealing with...
she'll make you eat a whole bunch of vegetarian food. And you're like,
no, come on.
Can't be Buddhist.
But how do they approach all this? Is there any lessons to be learned from other cultures like that? Or are they just as unsure? The Buddhist doctors are just as unsure as what they're...
Circle of life. But Buddhists believe in reincarnation, I believe. And so it's just part of a circle of life. Obviously with any death in any faith, there's sadness for those of us who are left behind. The question is, what is your view? Is death a finality?
Right.
Or is death just walking through the door?
I'll tell you another weird thing, since we're opening up here. So when my mother died, I was not there. I stepped out of the room. I couldn't handle it anymore, and I left for a little while, and she died. And in a weird way, I thought that's probably better for me and better for her. My dad was there, so she wasn't alone, but I couldn't handle that. So later on, as my dad got ill, as my aunt got ill, my wife made a big point. I really got mad about it. She said, you better be there this time. And I'm like, I don't want to be there. Honest to God, I don't want to watch this happen. I don't think I'm alone in that feeling, but I did. And I was there for both times. And I will tell you, it was the most. I mean, yes, we're crying and it's upset, but in a weird way, it was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen, to hold their hand and watch them slip away, and to say goodbye, and to say everything you wanted to say, and to watch it. They both died peacefully. They weren't violently, choking or something or whatever here. And I thought, oh my God, this is weird to say to anybody, but it was one of those, and it reminded me, I had been there at the birth of, we have an adopted daughter, so I didn't see her birth, but she's had 2 children along the way, and I was there both times. Immediately thereafter, the child comes out. To be there at the birth and to be there at the conclusion, at the death, were 2 of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. It sounds crazy to say that, but it really was.
Amazing.
And so I think people rob themselves of something, that experience, because we're all so afraid of seeing it and being part of it. And if it's done right, again, I understand people choke and it's horrible, screaming, and I'm not saying that, but it is something. It's part of living. In the same way that I'll get on my little horse and preaching horse here. I don't know why today we don't have funerals anymore. Funerals are gone. We have little celebration of life for 5 seconds. Time's up. Dr. Trinh was a great guy. Got to go. We don't look at the body. We don't go to the grave. We don't. And people just like at Disneyland. You know how they clean Disneyland at night? You never see anybody cleaning Disneyland. The hospitals are all cleaned out. The dead bodies are just removed silently. And you never. What happened to Joe? We lost him. Where did we lose him? Where did he go? There isn't so there's no conclusion. There's no finality. You don't physically, there's something, all my friends say, well, that was horrible. I don't want to go watch. I don't want to be there when they die. I don't want to see an open casket. I don't want to go to the grave and throw dirt and all this stuff. But the purpose of all that was to force the emotion out and to get you to come to some resolution of this, and hopefully then move on with a group of people around you to support you. When we do this alone, they just die and they disappear. What happened to Joe? He's gone. What are we going to do? I don't know. Maybe we'll get together and have a little, raise a drink, but that's about it. That whole notion of some ceremony is gone. Talk about that. That's kind of the finale. That's part of that whole thing. we're not there at the end, and we want to get it over with as quick as we can.
Well, it's a lot of it with a lot of people has to do with guilt feelings. Guilt feelings for maybe they didn't do everything that they wanted to do with that person. Maybe they weren't good to that person. Maybe that mom or dad was abusive to them.
Yeah, right.
Maybe there may be so many guilt feelings that they don't want to face it. And maybe they themselves didn't do what they were supposed to do for their mom and dad. So we have a lot of guilt feelings. My mom died when I was in nursing school in Ireland. And I was 18 at the time. And she had a massive heart attack. And I had just seen her the weekend beforehand. I was home. And for some reason, I had a really difficult time with it because I wasn't there with her.
Right,
she
exactly.
died. You know, I couldn't get there. I mean, she died within 2 hours.
Yeah,
she had a heart attack and died within 2 hours. And it was just, there was guilt there for me. Well, why wasn't I there? Why didn't it happen the weekend that I was there?
Right.
You know, there's a lot of feelings that go with you know, how we deal with death and dying. And
I'll tell you one story. This is kind of maybe a touching story or a funny story. But so my late aunt never got married. My mother's sister. I thought she was great. My mother died. She became sort of my surrogate mother, and she was a good Irish woman and a good Midwesterner. And so she never said "I love you" to anybody, to me or anybody. We knew she did, but that was just, I don't have to say that's silly stuff. I don't have to say that kind of nonsense, you know. And so she's dying, and I know she's dying. I race out to be there with her. She's in a nursing home at this time out in the Palm Springs area. I go out there, I get there in time, and they said she's been unresponsive for hours. She's apparently in a coma or whatever here. She just won't open her eyes. So I started talking to the nurse there, and I said, you know, I'm all crying and everything. I said, well, I guess this is it, and trying to say goodbye to her and hoping she can hear me. Nothing happens. I say to the nurse, I said, you know, the sad thing is, in my whole life, I never heard her once say the words, "I love you." I would have loved to have heard her say, "I love you" once. And this is like out of a movie. And honest to God, she hasn't responded for 8 hours or something. And suddenly I hear her going, I go, oh my God, she's speaking. She's speaking. What is it? What is it you want to say? What's your final words? And she says, "I love you." And she dies. Oh my God. It's like I had to wait to the final seconds to hear this, but thank God I was there. You know, it was wild. It was, there is something about it.
Yeah, it's a stoic Irish personality.
Yes.
That my mom or dad never said "I loved you." I loved you.
It's part of that crazy culture. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was not the way they did it. They just showed it in other ways.
Yes.
They just couldn't say it. Now I don't know why. You know, because the Irish are very relational people.
Oh, very emotional. Everything here.
They can't say I love you.
Oh, is it like a vulnerability thing? Like what if they don't say it back, or what if they don't?
No, it's not done. My grandmother was the same way. My wife's mother was very Irish. And father was very Irish, very loving guy. He would never say it. It's like it's embarrassing somehow. I don't have to say this.
Yes.
There's an embarrassment
and it's so funny because just in the last 2 years, I started saying that to my brothers and sisters. When we were in a conversation, and we talk with each other because we're all over the world. Right. And now when we end a conversation, my brothers and sisters always say, "I love you."
Good for you.
How did it feel?
It feels really good, but they had to be told to do it, and it had to be comfortable for them to do it. Right. Because it was like you said, it was embarrassing. It made them vulnerable. They couldn't say it. It was part of that culture. It's a cultural thing, you know, with them.
I don't know what it is, a weakness or a toughness or
But now we do it every time. And my older brother was the worst. I couldn't get him to do it for a while, but now he does it all the time.
Dan Daly talks about going to Maine to be with his sister who's dying and reminiscing and saying goodbye. It is part of the journey. And if you miss that part of the journey, you miss out maybe on something special like we're talking about here. It's not easy. Nobody wants to be there. They don't want to be there. You don't want to be there. But I also thought it's a sense of honor that I don't want to die alone, and I'll bet they don't want to die alone. You know, there's a
Right.
certain, it's not just thinking about me, it's thinking about them, being there for them.
There
We
is
have
a program called No One Dies Alone.
Mm.
There are a group of volunteers that get together and go in and sit with somebody who has nobody to stay with them. Now, I don't know if they're still doing that because of COVID, but we had that at Mission Hospital.
Would you put us in touch with them? That would be a fascinating guest to come on, because there's a topic nobody wants to talk about, the dying. Just
Yeah.
take them away, put them in a nursing home, let the doctor take care of them, cremate their body immediately, and we'll just have some little ashes. And one day you see them, the next day you don't. They're just gone.
Wow.
Sister Twee would be a good one to talk about that.
Oh, Sister Twee. Yes, we brought her on the show before.
Yes.
We had her on.
Remember the Catholic nun?
I do.
Yeah,
She was fascinating.
we should bring her back and
Talk about that sometime, because I think that would be fascinating. This dead and dying, this moment of truth, this finality to. We all want to be there when a baby's born. Nobody wants to be there when somebody dies, including the doctor.
ooh, that's a good thing. We really
Yeah.
Well, tell us how we get in touch with you. We're out of time. I love the stories. I love listening to the Irish tell their story. Irish just, Doctor, I don't know if the Vietnamese do this, but the Irish love to tell stories. Everything's a story. In fact, I'll tell you my story. When I went to Ireland one and only time, I'm walking through Dublin with my parents. We all go back one time to the old country to see what it's like here. And we're asking somebody, where is O'Connell Street, the big street in Dublin there? Mm-hmm. And the guy comes up to me, honest to God, and I said, excuse me, can you tell me where O'Connell Street is? Oh, O'Connell Street, where me father met me mother. Ah, and what a rat he turned out to be. If only she'd walked down the other street. And it goes on for this whole 20 minutes. I'm like, is it left or right? There's no simple answer. No simple answers there. Everything's got a story.
Relationship, that's the relationship there. You can reach us at hcfusa.org or via email to me, hcfusa53@gmail.com. And
how can we support you? Is this, do you need donations? Do you need volunteers? What is it that you hope to get from the audience today?
We would certainly love to have volunteers to help us. We're going to do a little project, Dr. Trinh and I, with the homeless. We would like to get blankets and care packets and sleeping bags together for the homeless people. We'd like to do that project. We're working on that right now. We have a conference coming up May 23rd on a Sunday, and that is called Self-Care Strategies to Maintain Our Physical, Spiritual, and Mental Health.
Where is that, and where will that be held, and is there a cost for that?
That will be a Zoom call, and
Okay.
we haven't, it will be on our website, and we will have a speaker. You might want to have her on your show, Skip MacDonald, speak on Jesus and mental health.
Interesting.
You never think
That
of
would be
Jesus
interesting
doesn't have to, mental health is not a topic that the church talks about any more than the physicians do. Mental health, you're kind of on your own. There's another world.
We also put out a magazine called the Healthcare Pulse that I edit and put out 3 times a year. And the last one just came out March 1st. You can go onto our website and pop your email in, and you can get a copy of that as well. And it is articles Dr. Trinh has written for us. I write for it, many different people. We had a person that you had, Jackie, or Isabel Tweet you had on your show. She wrote an article on our last magazine.
Well, Paula Ryle is watching from Ireland. Shout out to the old country here. We have the link on there. Maybe Dr. Trinh can put some of those other links that you're talking about for this event and stuff here.
She's my sister.
Ah, well, Paula, there you go.
Yes.
We got to get Paula and tell you the real truth of what's going on here.
Yeah. What's the dirt on Eithne?
Come on, we want to know.
What's the dirt?
This sounds too good to be true here. There's got to be some dirt in here somewhere.
I hear everything about Eithne.
I think you know all the dirt on me, Dr.
So maybe we should close with maybe we should close by breaking the ice of the Irish not saying I love you.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe we should just say it to each other, and then
And that's it?
Yeah, Paul,
I can't even say it myself here. This is hard to do. I
Edna,
love
I
you.
love you.
I
Paul,
love you guys. You know what I do?
Trinh, I love
I do
you.
love you, and I love this
Paul, I
show.
love you. Everybody watching, just know that you are loved.
Yeah.
oh yeah, especially OC Hospice is now in the house.
They're in the house. That's again, hospice is one of those places where people do come up and say, "You're not alone. We're here to help you. We do love you."
OC Hospice is loved. John
Yeah.
Gutierrez, awesome guy.
John Gutierrez, he spoke for us he speaks for us at our conferences. He did our last conference.
I'm going to extend this for one more minute because you guys hit a topic here that I think you should come back and talk about. Are the homeless loved? Are the homeless ever touched? Are the homeless ever held? We had somebody on another show and they said, that's one of the most powerful things, that when you're homeless, not only are you cast aside and you live in the shadows, but nobody ever touches you. Nobody ever hugs a homeless person. Nobody ever says, I love you to a homeless person.
Wow.
Not true. We do that all the time when they come in, because I think one of the things that they feel that they're not loved.
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't hug a homeless person. They're scary. They're dirty. They're frightening. Stay away,
But remember, they're God's child as well as you. And God loves you, and he also loves that homeless person too.
Well, I say they're today's lepers. Dr. Trinh talks about going back to leper colonies, people that are kept aside, we're afraid to touch them, we're afraid to look at them, we're afraid to get close to them. I think the same thing, they're the modern day lepers.
They are. Nobody wants to deal with them, touch them. You're absolutely right. We want them in the shadows.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they are today's lepers. And we don't need to go to Vietnam to our leprosy colonies to take care of lepers.
They're all around us.
In our backyard.
Yeah. Well,
so if
go ahead.
Anybody would like to help us out and help us gather the supplies to reach the homeless people. I was up in LA last week, and this is what prompted this issue. I was doing an audit in one of our sites at work, and there were tents of homeless people all along the side.
More so than ever, yeah.
It was devastating. Then I came back down to Anaheim, and right on the side of the road, before you got to Disney Way, there was another tent city. And it was just so sad. And I just said, we've got to do something for these people.
Everybody feels that, but take them over there. We'll handle them over there. Get them, move them from here to there.
No, we need to go straight to them.
Yeah.
We need to help them.
Yeah.
And actually, I did one of the studies that I did for my bachelor's, when I did my bachelor's, was on the homeless community with Illumination Foundation. I don't know if you've ever had them.
We're going to have them on another show coming up in a couple of weeks. We're going to do a show where we highlight different charities. We should get them on Dr. Trin's show. Well, I've shown the door twice here, and it's time to close it. Let's give them a final word of how we can get in touch with you. Apparently, your sister Paula says the young people in Ireland have no problem saying I love you anymore. That awful tradition's gone, so good for them. And let's, again, leave with a word of hope and how we can help. So how do we get in touch with you guys?
Okay, you can get in touch with us through HCF USA.
HCF.
H like in Harry, C like in cat, F like in Frank, USA.org or .com. We have both domains. And my email directly is hcfusa53@gmail.com.
Okay.
And we would love to have you volunteer with us. We'd love to have you on board with us. We'd love to have you speak for our conferences. And we love you. And God loves you too.
Well, I love that. Thank you.
So much love today.
So much love today here. Thanks for having us along. It really is. It gives us hope. They're even in the darkness here. I'll leave you with what I thought was interesting. So I'm a good Irish Catholic, but I haven't been to Mass in a year. I've never missed Mass for a day, much less a year. And finally, we went back for Easter, and I thought, how appropriate. If you believe in the message of Easter, that rising from the dead, we as a group of people are rising from the dead. We're coming out of the shadows again here and starting to embrace each other. And I thought, what a message of hope that was, an appropriate time to restart, to re-believe and restart some faith here.
And hug somebody today.
Hug somebody today. There you go. I'm going to go
Somebody
hug somebody
today.
right now.
Group hug, guys. Hug somebody
Yes.
today, John.
Hug. Virtual hug.
Virtual
Love you
hug.
all.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you very much for having me on today.
Thanks
thank
so
you,
much.
Dr. Trinh, and thank you, Paul.
All right. Take us out, Dr. Trinh.
Love, guys. All love.
Well, that's why we love coming back here each and every week to the only show that shows you how to live a healthier life, a happier life, a whole approach to health. Right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio.net.